The transport ship docked with a loud hiss, and Megan Cole stepped onto Omega-7 station for the first time. The air smelled different here. It was cold and recycled, with a strange metallic taste that reminded her of old pennies. She adjusted the strap of her bag and looked around at the massive loading bay filled with soldiers from a dozen different worlds. She was one of only 8 humans in this training group. The rest of the recruits towered over her. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had skin that shifted colors like living oil. All of them looked at the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open disgust. A Valkyrian warrior named Torak stood near the front of the crowd. He was almost 8 feet tall, with gray skin thick as armor, and 4 arms that ended in clawed hands. When he saw the human contingent, he let out a barking laugh that echoed through the bay. "These are the famous humans?" he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "They look like they would break if I sneezed on them." Several aliens laughed. Megan said nothing. She simply watched Torak the way she used to watch wolves back on Earth during her field studies. She noted how he stood with his chest pushed forward. She saw how he looked to the others for approval after his joke. He was the loudest voice in the room, which meant he was probably not the most dangerous one. A reptilian officer approached the new arrivals. His scales were deep green, and his eyes had vertical pupils that never seemed to blink. The insignia on his chest marked him as Commander Vexroth. "Welcome to Omega-7, he said in a voice like gravel sliding down a metal slope. "This station will be your home for the next 6 cycles. You will train together. You will fight together. And if war comes, you will die together." His gaze moved over the humans and lingered on them with obvious doubt. "Some of you come from worlds that have produced great warriors for generations. Others come from worlds that the galaxy has not yet learned to take seriously." He did not need to say which category humans fell into. Everyone already knew. The first week was brutal. Physical assessments pushed every recruit to their limits. Megan scored average in endurance and below average in strength. She could not lift what the Volcorians lifted. She could not run as fast as the long-legged Thessians. In hand-to-hand combat drills, Torak threw her across the mat so hard that she slid into the wall. "Get up, soft skin," he said while the others watched. "Or have you already had enough?" Megan got up. She always got up. But she did not try to fight him the same way twice. Instead, she started watching. She watched how he shifted his weight before a strike. She watched how his second right arm always dropped slightly when he was about to grab. She stored this information away like coins in a jar. Kira Dawson was another human soldier, a year ahead of Megan in training. She found Megan sitting alone in the mess hall one evening and dropped into the seat across from her. "You're the quiet one," Kira said. "The one Torak keeps using as a punching bag." "I prefer to think of it as research," Megan replied. Kira laughed. "Research. I like that." She leaned closer. "Listen, the aliens here think humans are soft because we don't have claws or armor or venom. But I've seen enough to know that's not the whole story. You keep getting up. That counts for something." They became friends after that. Kira showed Megan the unwritten rules of the station. Which officers to avoid. Which mess hall served food that humans could actually digest. Which corridors were shortcuts and which ones led to restricted areas. It was Kira who first told her about the containment wing. "Stay away from level 7, Kira warned one night. "That's where they keep the Shrike." Megan frowned. "The Shrike?" "An apex predator from Carveth 9, one of the deadliest creatures ever discovered. The Coalition captured it years ago, thinking they could use it as a weapon." Kira shook her head. "It's killed 12 handlers. 12. They can't control it, but they won't destroy it either. So it just sits down there in a cage, waiting." Megan found herself thinking about the Shrike long after the conversation ended. She thought about it during drills when Torak knocked her down. She thought about it during the long nights when sleep would not come. Something about a creature so fierce that no one could tame it stirred a strange feeling in her chest. One evening, she found herself walking toward level 7 without really meaning to. The corridors grew darker and quieter the deeper she went. Security checkpoints scanned her badge but let her pass. She was not trying to enter the containment area. She just wanted to see. Through a reinforced window, she caught her first glimpse of the creature. The Shrike was six-limbed with scales as black as deep space. Its eyes glowed with soft bioluminescence, blue and cold like distant stars. It moved in its cage with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Every motion was precise. Every step was silent. It was not mindless. Megan could see that immediately. There was intelligence in those glowing eyes. And beneath the intelligence, there was something else. Fear. The Shrike was afraid. Not of the cage. Not of the handlers. It was afraid in a deeper way. The kind of fear that came from pain repeated so many times that the body learned to expect it. Megan had seen that look before in abused animals back on Earth. A guard noticed her standing at the window. "Move along, recruit." Nothing to see here. Megan turned to leave. But she looked back one more time before she did. The Shrike was watching her too. That night, she lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling while the station hummed around her. She thought about how everyone on this station measured strength by how hard you could hit, how fast you could run, how much you could lift. They thought power meant making others afraid, but Megan knew a different kind of strength. She had seen it in the wolves that accepted a human researcher into their pack. She had seen it in the horses that ran toward gentle hands instead of away from whips. True power was not about making others fear you. It was about making them trust you. Somewhere on level 7, an apex predator sat alone in a cage. It had killed 12 handlers because 12 handlers had tried to break it. Maybe, Megan thought, it needed someone who would try something else. The alarm started screaming 3 hours before dawn. Red lights flashed through every corridor. A voice on the intercom announced words that made Megan's blood run cold. Containment breach on level 7. The Shrike is loose. All personnel, shelter in place. Repeat, the Shrike is loose. The station became chaos in seconds. Soldiers ran through corridors with weapons drawn. Officers shouted orders that overlapped and contradicted each other. Emergency doors slammed shut throughout the lower levels, trapping some personnel inside and locking others out. Megan was caught between two security checkpoints when the lockdown happened. One moment she was moving with her unit toward the evacuation point. The next moment, a massive steel door crashed down in front of her, separating her from Kira and the others. "Megan." Kira's voice came through the door, muffled but frantic. "Hold on. We'll get security to override the lock." "Go," Megan called back. "Get to safety. I'll find another way around." She heard Kira argue with someone, then footsteps moving away. The corridor fell silent, except for the distant wail alarms and the hum of emergency lighting. Megan was alone on level 6. One floor above where the Shrike had broken free. She moved carefully through the dim hallway, keeping her back to the wall and her footsteps light. Her training had not prepared her for this. Nothing could prepare anyone for being trapped with a creature that had killed 12 trained handlers. But panic would not help her. Fear would not save her. She thought about what she knew. The Shrike was fast and deadly, but it was also an animal. Animals did not kill without reason. They killed for food, for territory, for self-defense. The handlers who died had probably tried to subdue the Shrike with force. They had probably cornered it, threatened it, made it feel like it had no choice but to fight. Megan would not make that mistake. She heard it before she saw it. A soft clicking sound, like claws on metal. It came from somewhere ahead of her, around a corner where the emergency lights flickered and buzzed. She stopped walking and listened. The clicking stopped too. It knew she was here. Megan took a slow breath. She lowered herself into a crouch, making her body smaller. She kept her hands visible and open at her sides. She did not look directly at the corner where the sound had come from. Predators often took direct eye contact as a challenge or a threat. The clicking resumed. Closer now. The Shrike came around the corner like a shadow given form. Its black scales absorbed the dim light, making it hard to see where the creature ended and the darkness began. Only its eyes stood out, glowing that soft blue that Megan remembered from the window. It was even larger than she had realized. Standing upright, it would have been nearly 9 feet tall. On all 6 limbs, it moved with its head at the same level as hers. Then it stopped 10 feet away from her. Its nostrils flared as it took in her scent. Megan stayed very still. She kept her breathing slow and even, though her heart hammered against her ribs like it wanted to escape her chest. She did not run. Running would trigger a chase response. She did not scream. Loud noises would startle it into attack mode. She simply crouched there and let the creature assess her. The Shrike tilted its head. The gesture was almost curious. Megan slowly turned her face to the side, exposing her neck. In the animal kingdom, this was a sign of submission. It said, "I am not a threat to you." She had no idea if the Shrike would understand this gesture, but it was the only card she had to play. Seconds passed like hours. The Shrike moved closer. Megan could smell it now, a strange scent like copper and rain. She could hear its breathing, deep and slow. One of its 6 limbs reached toward her, the clawed tip hovering inches from her face. She did not flinch. The claw withdrew. The Shrike made a low rumbling sound deep in its chest. Not a growl, not a warning. It was something else. Something almost like a question. Megan slowly raised one hand, palm out. "It's okay," she said softly. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "I'm not going to hurt you. Nobody is going to hurt you." The Shrike's head tilted again. It stepped closer still, so close that Megan could have touched it if she reached out. Its bioluminescent eyes studied her with an intensity that felt almost human. Then it sat down. Megan almost laughed from sheer relief. The most dangerous predator in Coalition space had just sat down in front of her like a dog waiting for a treat. Its 6 limbs folded beneath its body, and its tail curled around its haunches. The rumbling sound continued, softer now. It was not a question, Megan realized. It was a purr. Footsteps thundered in the distance. Voices shouted commands. The security teams had found them. Target located. Level 6, Corridor 12. Weapons ready. Megan stood up slowly and turned to face the approaching soldiers. They came around the corner with plasma rifles raised, a full squad of Valkorians and Sithrans in heavy armor. At their front was Commander Vexrath himself, his reptilian face twisted with tension. "Recruit!" he barked. "Get away from that creature." "Wait," Megan said. She held up both hands. "Don't shoot. It's calm. It won't attack if you don't threaten it. It killed a Hamler tonight," Vexrath snarled. "It has killed 12 before that. Step aside so we can contain it." Behind Megan, the Shrike rose to its feet. The rumbling in its chest changed tone, becoming deeper, more dangerous. It had seen the weapons. It remembered what those weapons meant. "Lower your rifles," Megan said. "You're scaring it." "Scaring it?" Torak pushed forward from the squad. "That monster could tear through all of us in seconds. And it will if you point guns at it." Megan snapped. It was the first time she had raised her voice since arriving on the station. The soldiers actually hesitated. It's not attacking because it doesn't feel threatened. Right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a bloodbath. So lower your weapons and let me handle this." Commander Vexroth stared at her. His vertical pupils narrowed to thin slits. For a long moment, Megan thought he would order the squad to fire anyway and accept whatever casualties followed. Then he raised one hand. "Lower weapons," he said quietly. The rifles went down. The Shrike's growl faded back into that strange purr. Megan turned to face the creature again. She moved slowly, keeping her movements predictable. "Ton," she said gently. "Let's go back to your room. No one is going to hurt you. I promise." She began to walk down the corridor toward the containment wing. She did not look back to see if the Shrike would follow. She simply trusted that it would. The soft clicking of claws on metal told her she was right that the soldiers watched in stunned silence as Megan Cole. The soft skin they had mocked for weeks led the deadliest predator in Coalition space back to its cage, like it was a lost puppy. When the containment door sealed shut behind the Shrike, Commander Vexrath approached Megan. His face was unreadable. "How did you do that?" he asked. "I didn't try to control it," Megan said simply. "I just tried to understand it." Vexrath studied her for a long time. Then he nodded once. "Report to the containment wing at 0600 tomorrow," he said. "You are now assigned to the Shrike handling team." Torak stepped forward. "Commander, that's a death sentence." Every handler before her. "I am aware of the history," Vexroth cut him off. "But I am also aware of what I just witnessed." He looked at Megan with something that might have been the first hint of respect. "Perhaps this human knows something we do not." He walked away before anyone could argue. Megan stood alone in the corridor, exhausted and trembling now that the danger had passed. But beneath the fear and the fatigue, she felt something else. Hope. The first morning was the hardest. Megan arrived at the containment wing at exactly 0600, just as Commander Vexrath had ordered. The guards at the entrance looked at her like she was walking to her own funeral. One of them, a grizzled Scytheran with scars across his snout, actually offered her a blessing in his native tongue. "May your death be swift," he said. "The Shrike does not play with its food." "I'm not planning to be food," Megan replied. "But thank you for the thought." She entered the containment area alone. Protocol demanded that handlers work in pairs, but the last 3 partners had quit after watching their colleagues die. No one wanted to be paired with the new human recruit. That was fine with Megan. She worked better alone. Anyway, the Shrike was waiting at the front of its enclosure when she arrived. Its bioluminescent eyes tracked her movement across the room. The rumbling started in its chest the moment it recognized her. "Good morning," Megan said softly. "Remember me?" She spent the first hour just sitting outside the enclosure, talking in a calm, steady voice. She told the Shrike about Earth. She told it about the wolves she had studied in the mountains, how she had spent 3 years earning their trust before they let her walk among them. She told it about her mother's garden and her father's terrible jokes and the dog she had growing up who was afraid of thunderstorms. The Shrike listened. Megan could tell it was listening because its head would tilt at certain words. Its ears would twitch at changes in her tone. It did not understand her language, but it understood that she was not there to hurt it. On the second day, she entered the enclosure. The security team nearly broke down the door to stop her. Commander Vexrath had to be called from a meeting to authorize her continued access. He stood at the observation window with his arms crossed, watching as Megan sat cross-legged on the floor of the cage while the most dangerous predator in the galaxy circled around her. "She's insane," Torak said. He had come to watch too, though Megan suspected his reasons had changed from mockery to genuine curiosity. "The creature will kill her." "Perhaps," Vexrath said. "Or perhaps not. We shall see." The Shrike did not kill her. It circled and sniffed and rumbled, but it did not attack. By the end of the hour, it had settled down next to her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from its scaled body. Megan named it Shadow. The weeks that followed became a routine. Every morning, Megan arrived at the containment wing. Every morning, she entered Shadow's enclosure and spent hours building trust. She learned its body language. She learned that the rapid clicking of its claws meant excitement, not aggression. She learned that the soft blue glow of its eyes brightened when it was happy and dimmed when it was sad. She also learned what the previous handlers had done wrong. The records showed a pattern of pain compliance. Electric shocks when Shadow did not obey. Starvation when it showed aggression. Beatings when it tried to escape. 12 handlers had died, yes, but they had died because they treated Shadow like a monster instead of a living creature, capable of fear and memory and trust. Megan threw out the old protocols. She used food rewards instead of punishments. She let Shadow set the pace of their training instead of forcing commands onto it. When it became agitated, she backed away and gave it space instead of pushing harder. Slowly, day by day, Shadow began to change. It started waiting for her at the enclosure door each morning. It started responding to simple commands: sit, stay, come. It would follow her around the containment area like an enormous, deadly puppy. The guards who had once blessed her for a swift death now watched through the observation window, with their mouths hanging open. One afternoon, Torak came to the containment wing. He stood at the entrance for a long time before he finally spoke. "I want to know how you do it," he said. His voice was quieter than Megan had ever heard it. "That creature has killed warriors stronger than me, faster than me, better armed than me, but it follows you like a hatchling follows its mother. What is your trick?" Megan looked up from where she sat, scratching the ridge behind Shadow's ear. The massive predator was practically melting into the floor with contentment. "There is no trick," she said. The other handlers tried to break Shadow because they thought that was the only way to control something dangerous. But you can't build loyalty through fear. Fear only creates enemies waiting for a chance to strike. She shrugged. "I just gave Shadow a reason to trust me instead." Torak's 4 arms crossed over his chest. "Trust," he repeated, like the word tasted strange in his mouth. "Valkorians do not speak much of trust. We speak of strength, of dominance, of victory. And how many of your people has Shadow killed?" Megan asked. The question hit home. Torak's jaw tightened. 2 of the dead handlers had been Valkorians. "I want to see for myself," he said. "I want to enter the enclosure." Megan stood up slowly. Shadow's eyes followed her movement, then shifted to Torak. The rumbling in its chest deepened. "Shadow doesn't know you," Megan said. "If you go in there trying to prove how strong you are, you'll die. That's not a threat. That's just the truth." "Then I will not try to prove anything," Torak said. "I will do as you did. I will make myself small. I will show it that I am not a threat." Megan studied him for a long moment. The arrogance that had defined him when she first arrived was still there, but something else had joined it. Something that looked almost like humility. "Okay," she said, "but you do exactly what I tell you. No arguments. No hesitation." Torak nodded. They entered the enclosure together. Shadow immediately rose to its full height, its scales bristling and its bioluminescent eyes locked onto Torak. A low growl built in its throat. "Lower yourself," Megan said quietly. "Slowly. Keep your arms at your sides." Torak lowered himself to his knees. For a Valkorian warrior, this was an act of profound submission. His people knelt only before their highest chiefs. But he did it without complaint. Shadow approached him. Its nostrils flared as it took in his scent. The growl continued, neither rising nor falling. "Turn your head," Megan instructed. "Show it your neck." Torak turned his head. His jaw was clenched so tight that Megan could see the muscles bulging beneath his gray skin. Shadow's clawed limb reached out and touched Tarek's shoulder. One razor-sharp tip pressed against the thick hide, hard enough to leave a mark but not hard enough to draw a blood dot. Then it withdrew. The growl faded. Shadow settled back onto its haunches, watching Tarek with those strange glowing eyes. "It's testing you," Megan said. "It wanted to see how you would react." "You passed." Tarek let out a breath he had been holding for what felt like minutes. "That was the most terrifying moment of my life," he admitted. "Welcome to handling," Megan said with a small smile. They were interrupted by a sudden commotion outside the enclosure. Guards rushed past the observation window. Alarms began to wail throughout the station. Commander Vexrath's voice came over the intercom, sharp with urgency. "All combat personnel report to Briefing Room 1. The Dominion has launched an attack on Colony Vareth 4. We deploy in 6 hours." Megan felt her blood run cold. The Dominion was the Coalition's greatest enemy, a brutal empire that conquered worlds and enslaved populations. If they were attacking a colony, thousands of lives were at stake. Vexrath appeared at the enclosure entrance, his reptilian face grim. "Recruit Cole. The Council has decided. The Shrike will be deployed as a weapon against the Dominion forces. You will accompany it and maintain control during combat operations." "Sir." Megan stepped forward. "Shadow is not a weapon. It's a living creature. If you send it into battle, I am not asking for your opinion." Vexrath cut her off. "I am giving you an order. Prepare the Shrike for transport. We leave at dawn." He turned and walked away, leaving no room for argument. Megan looked at Shadow. The creature's eyes had dimmed to a deep, worried blue. It could sense her distress, even if it did not understand the words. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'll protect you. I promise." She just hoped it was a promise she could keep. Colony Vareth 4 was burning when they arrived. Megan could see the smoke from the dropship window, thick black columns rising from the settlement below. The Dominion had hit fast and hard. Their warships hung in orbit like metal vultures, raining fire on the defenders, while ground troops poured through breaches in the colony walls. 30 minutes until landing, the pilot announced. Coalition forces are engaged on the Eastern Front. Casualties are heavy. Megan sat in the cargo hold with Shadow beside her. The creature was fitted with a control collar around its neck, a device the commanders had insisted upon despite her protests. The collar could deliver electric shocks strong enough to drop the Shrike if it went out of control. Megan hated it. She had worked so hard to build trust with Shadow, and now they were putting a torture device back around its throat. "It's just a precaution," Commander Vexrath had said. "The Council will not deploy the creature without it." Shadow had let her put the collar on, but its eyes had dimmed when she did. It knew what the collar meant. It remembered Kira dropped into the seat beside Megan. She was in full combat armor, a plasma rifle across her lap. "How are you holding up?" "Terrified," Megan admitted. "I've never been in real combat before. Training drills don't prepare you for actual war." "Nobody's ever really prepared," Kira said. "You just do what you have to do and hope you survive long enough to feel scared about it afterward." She looked at Shadow. "And how's our secret weapon?" Shadow's head turned toward Kira. The creature had grown used to her presence over the past weeks. It did not trust her the way it trusted Megan, but it no longer growled when she approached. "Shadow is not a weapon," Megan said quietly. "That's what everyone keeps forgetting." The dropship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere. Outside the windows, the sky turned from black to orange to blue. The sounds of distant explosions grew louder. They landed in a clearing half a mile from the front lines. Coalition soldiers were everywhere, taking cover behind rubble and returning fire against Dominion positions. The enemy troops were tall and insectoid, their bodies covered in natural armor that gleamed like black glass. They moved with terrifying coordination, each unit acting as part of a larger whole. Commander Vexwrath gathered the strike team around him. Our objective is to break the enemy line and push them back from the civilian shelters. Thousands of colonists are trapped inside. If the Dominion reaches them, he did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what the Dominion did to captured populations. The Shrike will lead the assault, Vexwrath continued. Handler Cole will maintain control from the rear. The rest of us will follow and secure the ground the creature takes. Megan wanted to argue. She wanted to say that this was wrong, that Shadow deserved better than being used as a living battering ram. But colonists were dying. Children were hiding in shelters while bombs fell around them. She could not let her feelings for one creature outweigh thousands of innocent lives. "Shadow," she said softly, "stay with me. Do what I say. And please, come back to me when this is over." The creature pressed its massive head against her shoulder. The rumbling in its chest was softer than usual. Worried. Then the assault began. The coalition forces pushed forward, and Shadow led the charge. The Shrike was a nightmare made flesh on the battlefield. It moved through Dominion lines like death itself, its 6 limbs slashing and tearing through armored bodies. Enemy soldiers tried to bring their weapons to bear, but Shadow was too fast. It would strike and vanish, leaving chaos in its wake. "It's working!" Torak shouted over the din of battle. He was fighting beside Kira, his forearms wielding 2 massive blades that carved through any Dominion soldier foolish enough to approach. "The enemy line is breaking." But Megan saw what the others did not. She saw how Shadow moved with increasing frenzy, how its bioluminescent eyes had turned from soft blue to angry red. The creature was losing itself in the violence. The smell of blood, the screams of the dying, the chaos all around, it was triggering something primal and uncontrollable. "Shadow," she called out, to me. "Shadow, come back." The creature did not respond. It had found the cluster of Dominion soldiers and was tearing through them with savage fury. Its movements were no longer precise. They were wild, desperate. The discipline Megan had built over weeks of careful training was crumbling under the weight of ancient instincts. Then a plasma bulb struck the control collar. The device sparked and smoked, then died completely. Its indicator lights went dark. Shadow stopped in the middle of the battlefield. Its head swung around, those red eyes scanning the chaos. And then it screamed, a sound so loud and terrible that soldiers on both sides froze in their tracks. The Shrike had been unleashed. It turned on the nearest living things, which happened to be coalition soldiers. A Thracian warrior fell before anyone could react. A Scytheran tried to raise her weapon and was cut down mid-motion. "The creature is out of control," someone shouted. "Fall back! Fall back!" Panic spread through coalition ranks. Soldiers who had been advancing moments ago were now fleeing from their own weapon. The Dominion forces, seeing the chaos, began to press their advantage. The assault was falling apart. Megan did not run. She pushed through the retreating soldiers, moving toward Shadow instead of away. Her heart pounded in her chest. Her lungs burned with smoke and fear. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but she kept moving forward. "Cole, get back here!" Commander Vexwrath roared. "That's an order." She ignored him. A Dominion soldier stepped into her path, its mandibles clicking with hungry anticipation. Before it could attack, a blur of gray slammed into it from the side. Torak stood over the fallen enemy, his blades dripping with dark ichor. "Go," he said to Megan. "Save your beast. I'll watch your back." Kira appeared on her other side, rifle raised. "We both will." Together, the 3 of them pushed through the battlefield toward Shadow. Dominion soldiers fell to Torak's blades. Threats that slipped past him were cut down by Kira's precise shots. Megan ran between them, focused only on the massive black shape rampaging ahead. Shadow was surrounded by bodies now, both enemy and ally. Its scales were slick with blood. Its breath came in ragged, angry bursts. When it saw Megan approaching, it turned toward her with those terrible red eyes. This was the moment. The creature could kill her in a heartbeat. One swipe of its claws, and she would be just another body on the battlefield. Megan stopped walking. She lowered herself to her knees, just as she had done that first night in the corridor. She turned her head, exposing her neck. She made herself small and vulnerable in the middle of a war zone. "It's me," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but somehow it cut through the noise of battle. "It's just me. You're safe now. You're safe." Shadow stalked toward her. Its breath was hot on her face. Its claws dug into the ground beside her knees. Megan reached up with trembling hands and found the broken collar around its neck. She unclasped it and let it fall to the blood-soaked dirt. "No more pain," she promised. "No more control. Just you and me." Shadow's eyes flickered. Red to purple. Purple to blue. The rage faded. The creature's massive body shuddered once, then settled. It lowered its head until its bioluminescent eyes were level with Megan's own. The rumbling in its chest returned, soft, steady, trusting. "With me," Megan said. She rose to her feet and turned to face the Dominion forces that were pushing toward the civilian shelters. Shadow rose beside her. "Now," she said quietly, "let's finish this together." Human and Shrike moved as one, and the Dominion learned what it meant to face a true partnership. Megan woke to the sound of soft beeping. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the harsh white light of the medical bay ceiling. Her body ached in places she did not know could ache. Her throat was dry, and her head felt stuffed with cotton. "She's awake," Kira's voice said from somewhere nearby. "Hey, soldier. Welcome back to the land of the living." Megan turned her head and found Kira sitting in a chair beside her bed. The other woman looked tired but whole, with only a bandage on her arm to show for the battle. "How long?" Megan managed to croak. 3 days, Kira said. She poured a cup of water from a pitcher and helped Megan drink. "You took a plasma graze to the side during the final push. Lost a lot of blood before we could get you to the medics. The doctors said another few minutes and you wouldn't have made it." Megan tried to sit up, but pain flared through her midsection and she fell back against the pillow. "Easy," Kira said. "You're not going anywhere for a while. Shadow." The name came out as a whisper. "Where is Shadow?" Kira smiled. It was a strange smile, equal parts amazement and disbelief. "Your monster is fine. Better than fine, actually. It refused to leave the medical bay until they let it see you. The doctors nearly had a heart attack when a 6-limbed apex predator came walking through their doors." She laughed. "It's been sitting outside this room for 2 days. Won't eat. Won't sleep. Just waits." Megan felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them away. "The colony?" she asked. "Saved," Kira said. "The shelters held. 12,000 civilians made it out alive, including 300 children from the school that was right in the Dominion's path." Her expression grew serious. "You and Shadow broke their line, Megan. The enemy was pushing toward those shelters, and then you two came through like a storm. The Dominion commander actually called for a retreat. I've never seen that before. They don't retreat. They would rather die. But they retreated from her," a deep voice said from the doorway. Megan turned her head and saw Torax standing at the entrance to her room. The massive Valkorian looked different somehow. The arrogance that had defined him when they first met was still present, but it had been tempered by something else. Respect, perhaps. Or understanding. The Dominion soldiers could not comprehend what they were facing, Torek continued. He stepped into the room, his forearms folded across his broad chest. They had fought creatures before. They had fought warriors before. But they had never seen a creature and a warrior move together as one. He paused. You did not control the Shrike, human. You let it. And it followed because it chose to follow. Megan did not know what to say. Before she could find the words, the door opened again and Commander Vexrath entered. His reptilian face was as unreadable as ever, but he carried something in his hands. A small box made of polished wood. Recruit Cole, he said formally. Or should I say Handler Cole? He approached her bedside and opened the box. Inside, nestled on a cushion of dark velvet, was a medal. The insignia showed a creature and a humanoid figure standing side by side, connected by a thin golden chain. The Order of Bonded Service, Vexrath said. It has not been awarded in over 200 years. The last recipient was a Thracian handler who tamed a wild ravager and rode it into battle against slavers. He lifted the medal from the box. Today, it belongs to you. Megan stared at the medal. Her vision blurred with tears again, and this time she did not blink them away. Sir, she said, I didn't do anything special. I just treated Shadow like a living being instead of a tool. Anyone could have done the same. But no one did, Vexrath replied. 12 handlers tried. 12 handlers died. Not because they were weak or foolish, but because they could not see past their own assumptions about power and control. He placed the medal in her hands. You saw what they could not. That makes you special, whether you believe it or not. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. The Coalition High Command has reviewed the incident, he said. New protocols for creature handling will be implemented across all stations. Pain compliance is banned. Control collars are banned. All handlers will be required to complete training based on your methods. A faint smile crossed his scaled face. They are calling it the Cole Protocol. Megan's jaw dropped. The Cole Protocol? You have changed the way the galaxy thinks about the creatures we share it with, Vexrath said. That is not a small thing, Handler Cole. That is a legacy. He left without another word. A week later, Megan was well enough to walk. She moved slowly through the corridors of Omega-7, leaning on a cane and wincing with each step. But she refused to stay in bed any longer. She had somewhere she needed to be. The containment wing had been transformed in her absence. The harsh security lights had been replaced with softer illumination. The bare walls now held images of natural landscapes from a dozen different worlds. And Shadow's enclosure had been expanded, with climbing structures and water features and comfortable spaces for resting. Shadow was waiting at the barrier when Megan arrived. Its bioluminescent eyes glowed bright blue, and the rumbling in its chest started the moment it saw her. Megan opened the enclosure door and stepped inside. Shadow bounded toward her, then stopped just short of knocking her over. It lowered its massive head and pressed it gently against her chest, careful not to disturb her healing wounds. I missed you too, Megan whispered. She wrapped her arms around the creature's neck and held on tight. Footsteps approached from behind. Megan turned and saw Kira and Torek at the enclosure entrance. Behind them stood a group of recruits she did not recognize, aliens and humans alike, all watching with wide eyes. Handler Cole, Kira said with a grin. These are the new trainees. They've been asking to meet the legendary human who tamed the untamable. The recruits stared at her. Some looked skeptical. Some looked awed. One young Valkorian, barely out of adolescence, raised his hand like a child in school. Is it true that you walked through a battlefield without weapons to reach the Shrike? He asked. Yes, Megan said simply. Were you not afraid? Megan considered the question. I was terrified, she admitted. But I knew that if I didn't try, Shadow would either be killed or would kill everyone around it. Fear is not a reason to abandon someone who trusts you. The young Valkorian's eyes widened. Beside him, his fellow recruits exchanged glances. I have a question too, Torek said. He stepped forward until he stood at the enclosure barrier. When we first met, you said that humans did not become the dominant species of Earth by being the strongest. What did you mean by that? Megan smiled. She had been waiting for someone to ask that question. On my world, she said, humans are not the fastest or the strongest or the most dangerous creatures. We don't have claws or fangs or armor. We're small and soft and breakable. She scratched Shadow behind its sensory ridge, and the creature leaned into her touch with a deep, contented purr. But we became dominant anyway. Do you know why? The recruits shook their heads. Because we're the ones that everything else learned to follow, Megan said. We domesticated wolves and turned them into partners who hunted beside us. We befriended horses and rode them across continents. We earned the trust of creatures that could have killed us, and in return, they gave us their loyalty. She looked at Shadow, then back at the watching crowd. Strength is not about how hard you can hit. It's about how many others choose to stand beside you when the hitting starts. The room was silent. Even Torak had no response. Then Shadow raised its head and let out a sound that Megan had never heard before. It was not a growl or a purr or a scream. It was something softer, something almost like a song. What is that? Kira asked, amazed. Megan laughed, pure joy bubbling up from her chest. I think, she said, that's happiness. She walked out of the enclosure with Shadow at her side. The recruits parted to let them pass, watching with expressions that ranged from fear to wonder to something that looked like hope. They stepped into the training yard together, human and Shrike, handler and partner. The station's artificial sun cast long shadows across the deck as soldiers stopped their drills to stare. Megan did not mind the attention. She was done being small. She was done being quiet. She had proven something here, something that mattered. Humans were not weak. They were not soft. They were the species that turned enemies into friends and monsters into family. And the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that meant. Shadow purred beside her. And Megan smiled. This was only the beginning.